And welcome to another episode of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Steve Balestrieri. We are both PatsFans.com bloggers. Today, we will be talking about the Patriots' loss to the Cowboys and also preview the upcoming Saints game, discuss some of the recent injuries and additions with J.C. Jackson returning back to New England. I do want to preface this episode by saying that our platform StreamYard is having some technical issues, so apologize if there are any errors there. I'd also love for you all to subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. If you can like, share, leave us a review, it keeps us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. Be sure to check out all the great content by Ian Logan, all the contributors at PatsFans.com. Before we dive right into the Cowboys game, Steve, how you doing today, man?
Doing well, other than the technical issues. Before we start with the Cowboys game, I just wanted to say one of my favorite players when I was a kid growing up was Russ Francis, and he passed away last weekend. I know that a lot of fans don't remember him, but I think you have to go past the numbers, because back then the NFL was a very much running league, and especially the Patriots, they were a ground and pound team back in Francis's era, but he was one of the best tight ends to ever play the football game. I mean, in the NFL, him and Dave Casper revolutionized the way tight ends were used back in that day. They became deep threats for the first time. And Francis was one of the best. He's always been one of my favorite players. And as you know, on my Sunday column, I'm still beating the drum for him to be in the Pats Hall of Fame.
Well said, Steve. I actually caught myself watching about 20-ish minutes of highlights from him the other day before my time. But he... really, like you said, he definitely, I don't want to say revolutionized, but he was part of the newer wave of tight ends that was able to be much more implemented in the passing game, for sure, as a receiver. And there's a lot of things that he brought to the table. I think in today's game he would be a stud. He would be awesome. So well said on your part, Steve. I mean, to dive right into this, I will just be incredibly transparent to our listeners, as I always try to be. I called Steve distraught on Monday. I took away my belt, my shoelaces, and I was upset, Steve, and I still am. I think that this was. And, you can call me spoiled or whatever you want. I'm 33. I've seen a lot of good Patriots football. This is the worst loss I can remember the team having in a long time.
Yep.
Because it was just everything on the whole, Steve. It was not only how poor the play was and how overmatched you were. The ball was just not bouncing their way, sometimes quite literally. They had injury issues, which we'll talk about here shortly. So you added injury on top of insult. And I thought it kind of encompassed where they are as a team right now, Steve. I mean, there's just not, I think if you look at the Patriots roster on, as a whole, I don't think 11 through 53 is that bad. I do think that they're missing some of these top end talent. And it certainly doesn't help that you lost, I would argue, two of your top 3 or 4 players in the same game this week. And I just think that they're still missing some of that talent, Steve. And Dallas, I want to give Dallas credit. They played a phenomenal game. McCarthy is traditionally more of a running guy. He's more of an old school, old fashioned coach. He threw the ball a lot. I thought they took a lot of what Miami did against the Patriots, and they were patient. Miami, when the Patriots Miami played, some teams get frustrated. I think like the Eagles, for example, the first week got frustrated and would start chucking the ball deep and doing all these things. And they weren't willing to take the 5-6 yard chunk plays and see what happens. Now Dallas had some bigger plays, Steve, towards the end, but they were more patient, like Miami kind of showed. And on the flip side, on the offensive side of the ball, or on the defensive side of the ball, I thought they came out this week and said, you know what, we got our ass kicked by Arizona in the trenches. This week they wanted to show up and kind of impose their will. And I thought that there was a clear message, in my opinion, from the coaching staff to the Cowboys players, really not against the Patriots. I don't think it was like Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff was trying to, send a message to the Patriots. I think it was to his own players by going for, the fake field goal and to kind of get some juice back in that team, because they consider themselves one of the better teams in the NFC. And they didn't think their performance was a reflection of that the prior week. And I think they were just trying to make a message. I could be reading too much into it, Steve, but that's kind of how I took it. It was a huge win for the Cowboys. Worst loss in Belichick's tenure as a head coach. And honestly, it was, like I said, it was an incredibly frustrating game from a Patriots fan perspective.
Yeah. In fact, on Monday, I was getting phone calls from everybody.
You were playing therapist.
Yeah. I was the sounding board for everybody. Everyone's calling me, what the hell happened? Excuse my language. Basically, I think it's a microcosm of where this team is at. We know that they can hang with anybody, but they have to play their best football, and they have to kind of assert their will on these better teams. When all of it fails, with the disparity in talent, as you said, at the top end, these things are going to happen. And I mean, it's not like even during the Brady era, they didn't have their horrible moments. I go back to that game in Kansas City a few years ago where everyone was writing them off. This team is not good anymore. I remember hearing that.
Yep.
Because they were just so outclassed by the Chiefs that game. They ended up riding the ship in winning the Super Bowl. It's funny. This was Mac Jones's 35th start in his career. In Brady's 34th start, the Patriots got annihilated in Buffalo 31-0, where he threw 4 interceptions. Not comparing the two, just saying that these things can happen when everything collapses on you.
Yep.
And, they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. And again, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. It's just when you have, a team without a ton of top end talent, where you have to have everything working right and everything goes wrong, that's going to happen. Mac Jones had his worst game, I think, as a pro.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, the defense, look, they were already missing 3 of their top 4 cornerbacks. Then in the first quarter, Christian Gonzalez goes down. Now you're missing your top 4 cornerbacks, and they went right after Miles Bryant on the next play.
The first play right after the Gonzalez got off the field.
Yeah, because they know he's not a man coverage guy.
No.
And I will fault the coaches there, because I think everyone knew they were going to test him right there with CeeDee Lamb. Why didn't he have safety help? So that's a failure on the coaching staff. And, the same thing I can say offensively. Early in the game, I thought in the first quarter, Mac looked good. They were moving the ball. They only got a field goal, but I mean, I thought he looked pretty good. And that 42-yard reception to Demario Douglas,
that's awesome.
Then they didn't use him the rest of the game. I fault that.
We'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought that Mac early, to your point, looked good, and I think he has looked pretty good throughout this season when he's had time. Yep. His issue was it was almost Sam Darnold-ish with seeing ghosts in the pocket. I mean, there was pressure. There wasn't as much pressure as his body language indicated. If you could do like a freeze frame or not a freeze frame, but like an isolation of a camera just on Mac Jones dancing around, it was outrageous. I mean, he was just not seeing it. I mean, he almost threw it. He tried to throw like multiple picks that didn't actually, go
Yeah.
through. And it was definitely jarring, Steve. If you are someone like myself, like, look, I wasn't the biggest Mac Jones guy coming out of college. I remember when Russ was on the show with us, we talked about it, and I was more inclined to take some of the other quarterbacks that had a little bit more naturally physical, gifted traits. I wasn't against him necessarily, but I wasn't crazy about it, and I have defended him, I think, relatively for the most part. When he's been kind of attacked. Last year, I thought was BS, and this year, honestly, I thought some people that were blaming Mac, were just not seeing it. Because I thought he had played better than what the public perception was. There's no defending what happened on Sunday. And I think to his credit, he owns it. But, you can own it all you want. The results are this professional sports. I mean, the results are the results. And so, I think that this team lacks explosiveness. Hold anybody who wants to talk about, the Patriots don't need a number one receiver. Forget the phrase number one receiver. Let's just talk about physical talent to make plays.
Dynamic.
And Demario Douglas brings a dynamic presence. You saw it with that little spin move there on that 41-yard reception, or whatever it was.
42. Yep.
42. You saw they don't have guys that can do things like that. They need it. People ask me, I brought it up last week. I'll say it again. People talk about this offense and why it starts to get going and usually stalls out. Well, because they're 4 to 6 yards of play and they have to go 15, 16 plays down the field to score. So they need those chunk plays in order to put up points. They're just not doing it, man. And this game was so all-encompassing of so many issues they have, Steve. Incredibly, incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it was. And, going back to that first drive, when I saw them throw on 3rd and 1 down, I think it was at the 6-yard line, that glanced off Gesicki's hands, I thought, okay, they plan on going for it on 4th and 1. And I was all for that because we both know how good the Cowboys offense is. And, kicking field goals to just keep up with them is not going to be the answer. You have to have 6 points. I know it was really early in the game, but, be aggressive and tell you have to send the message to your team. We're coming in this to win it. We're not coming in it not to lose. And, it reminded me of Marty Ball. I mean, maybe I'm going too far with that, but the fact remains, Dallas's offense is on a much higher plane than the Patriots. And I thought they were going to go for it. I thought they should have went for it. If, you're 4th and 1, you have Elliott and Ramondre in the backfield. You should be able to get 1 yard, and give your offense a chance to punch it in. But
yeah, apparently they thought they were Philly. I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, and then another coaching decision I don't get. All right, the 4th and 1 that what everyone calling the tush push now because of Philly.
Well, that's what I was referring to. Yeah.
Yeah. But. Okay. So you have a guy the size of Pharaoh Brown, and the guy that you have pushing Mac from behind is Juju Smith-Schuster. What's wrong with that picture? Okay. I would have Pharaoh Brown behind him, and he's going to push a little harder. Nothing against Juju, but there's probably about 70 pounds difference between those two guys.
Well, and the Patriots offensive line has thoroughly underperformed this year.
Right.
They don't have the size that Philly does, and their quarterback doesn't squat 600 pounds like Jalen Hurts. So it's basically a rugby play, And Elijah chimes in. They need to give Malik Cunningham a shot and run Elliott more. I agree on the latter. The Malik Cunningham thing, Elijah, I think is. I think when we saw him in preseason, he gave a little flavor to one of those games, but I think they view him as a receiver, and I just don't think he has the processing to be an NFL quarterback. But I mean, look, while I don't agree with Malik Cunningham, I'll pretty much say this, Steve. I think that, to Elijah's point, to what we've been talking about, they need more dynamic players on the field. They just don't have them.
Put him in for a gadget player too. I don't have any problem with that. I mean,
right?
Like they're playing the Saints this week. Taysom Hill. And again, I'm not comparing Malik to Taysom Hill, but using a guy like that, at least when you bring him in, the defense is they're going to be aware that something out of the ordinary is going to be used. So it immediately puts them in reaction mode instead of, okay, we're just going to pin our ears back on third down because we know their offensive line is full of holes. And, to your point that you made earlier, to me, when we were talking, it seemed like from the second quarter on, Mac did not trust his either offensive line or his receivers to get open.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a great point. So,
yeah, I mean, he wasn't trusting it. He wasn't seeing it. I mean, the whole thing, like I said, Steve, the whole game just, and they need to, the whole bury the ball thing, burn the tape, whatever they got to do. You got to move on from this because it's just not.
And losing Judon's huge.
Yeah, well, let's get into that. I already kind of already alluded to this, and obviously anyone who's listening to the show has, seen the game and seen the injuries to Christian Gonzalez and Matt Judon, and man, when it rains, it pours. You lose your rookie corner that I thought was honestly becoming one of the better players in your team 1 month into his career. You lose probably your best overall player in Judon. I just think, Steve, it's a blow because at least when you go into these games, I think we all have kind of come to the realization that the offense is a work in progress and an up and down thing. The defense was something that you could rely on. Defense and coaching. It's like, okay, yeah, that's why I didn't think they were going to only, if Bill Belichick wasn't here and we were talking about this team going into the season, you might say 5 or 6 wins. I would say 8 or 9 with Bill because I think he brings that much to the table. And I think that his defense can get him can get him there. Now you lose your 2 strongest defenders. You're down your top 4 corners, as you said earlier. And then you lose your best pass rusher. The only silver lining out of the Judon thing will be that maybe we'll see more Keon White. But
Gerard Mayo said he will definitely play more.
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthony Jennings and Keon White should play more.
Mm-hmm.
But for Christian Gonzalez, I mean, you're talking about one of the hopefully building blocks. I mean, when he first got hurt, I was thinking to myself, oh, maybe it's like a little pinch, like a muscle pinch or, something like that. It didn't look too bad, maybe a slight separation. And then you hear that he's likely done for the season. It just, like I said, it's just a crusher, Steve. I mean, it's hard not to come off as negative on the show, and I hate when we have to do that. But sometimes you just have to call a spade, and there's nothing more to say than really it just flat out sucks.
Yeah, it did. He was already proving himself to be, one of the better corners in the league just a month in, and you look who he was facing up against. Bringing back J.C. Jackson for the price that they got him was a definite no-brainer. I mean, they're only paying him $1.25 million this year.
Yeah, a little over 1.5.
Oh, 1.5. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, that's like peanuts. And he's been very successful here. He's had a rough time in LA with the Chargers, but we've seen this before. Guys from the Patriots who did real well, went elsewhere, got paid, didn't perform well, came back and performed well again. I mean, Deion Branch. I'm thinking Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins multiple times. Guys like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic because Jackson was complaining that he wasn't healthy last week. So we'll see. But, he knows the system. It'll be seamless transition for him. And if he's able to stay healthy, he'll be a big boost to this secondary. And then, he's on the hook for no guaranteed money after this year.
Yeah, so the Chargers paid J.C. Jackson yesterday a little over $7.7 million, basically,
to go away.
The Patriots are on the hook now this year for basically 1.5, and then Jackson's under contract for the next 3 years, I think for about $12 million per, but they're all non-guaranteed. And you got him for a 6th and 7th rounder, which, as I said to you on the phone yesterday, I think the Patriots have a lot of cap space. They probably won't be doing a whole bunch of compensatory picks for this coming season, but the following year, I think after they spend a lot this offseason, I think they'll probably be a little bit more on the conservative side, which would then allow to get some compensatory picks for some of the guys they lose, and then you get your picks back for J.C. Jackson. So,
it's only a 6th
I could see a scenario. What?
Yeah, just a 6th rounder. So,
yeah, and I could see a scenario where he restructures after the year, and they come to like it's a new 3-year contract or something. Probably his last year is not guaranteed, and it's at a lower cap team friendly number or something like that. I could totally envision something like that, happening. But he is a welcome addition to what they have going on right now. So we'll see what happens. But let's step aside here for podcast purposes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to preview the Saints game right after this. All right, we are back here on Patriots 4th and 2. Again, Derek Haven, Steve Balestrieri. Again, please be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. We appreciate it. Be sure to check out PatsFans.com. We were talking about the Patriots' big loss to the Cowboys. We talked about the acquisition of J.C. Jackson. We talked about the Gonzalez and Judon injuries. Time to look ahead. Let's turn the page because we need a little more positivity. I'm all about positivity for those of you who've been longtime listeners. So let's talk about previewing the Saints game, Steve. Give me your opening take on the Saints or where the Patriots go this week. What do we think?
Well, the Saints are a lot like New England. They're relying on their defense, which has played very well. Their offensive line has been full of holes, and they've had trouble scoring points. Sounds very familiar. Derek Carr's banged up. He's not 100%. He gutted it out last week, but he did not look good. So, they're very much in the same boat, although they are 2-2, not 1-3. But, Alvin Kamara's back. They have Michael Thomas, Chris Olave. They have good weapons for their offense. They haven't been able to utilize them yet. So the Patriots defense is going to have to make a quick turnaround. For the Patriots offense, I mean, I hate to say it, but we're on to Cincinnati mode. I mean, this is a pivotal game for them. They have to turn things around this week. Because after last week, I feel like they have to win this game and play a ton better. They're at home. They're already 0-2 at home. I think if they lose this week, this season's going to unravel on them really fast.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a game it's really not a sneaky. It's an important game. I think similarly to how we talked about the Cowboys responding to their loss to the Cardinals the prior week, I think the Patriots need to send a message to really themselves about, what kind of team they are. Because if they were to lose this week, Steve, I mean, you're coming up a stretch here. You have a stretch here coming up that there are losable games, but in the next 6 weeks or so, there's a couple that you really should win. And there's some coin flip games. if you lose a game like, I'm not saying just this one, but you lose a game like this on Sunday, you're going to be staring, under 6 wins, I think, if you not be like if you can't pull off a game like this. I think the Saints have been a little bit in disarray. Carr hasn't had a great start to his time with the Saints. He is hurt, like you said. Alvin Kamara seemed a little frustrated last week. The offensive line for them has been issues. They've been using a lot of tight ends to chip, which we'll talk about here coming up. Defensively, they've been better in the past than they have been this year. But I just think all in all, I think the Patriots need to kind of send a message to themselves, Steve, and they need to. I think that Mac Jones is better. I agree with Bill on this. Let me just say this first. Let me back up. I think Bill said that the Patriots are a better team than what they showed last Sunday. I agree. They're not as bad as they looked on Sunday. I think Mac Jones is better than he looked on Sunday. And I think this offensive line as a whole on the season, not just this last week, is underperforming. I mean, they are better than they should be better than what they are right now. And I look at this team and say they need to kind of rally around each other right now and figure out some kind of a groove, Steve. It's really, really concerning about, I have a lot of questions with some of these inconsistencies that I don't understand. Some of the play calling. I don't understand some of the personnel choices. Really just some big questions for me all around on this team.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, the Saints are even in the turnover ratio. Patriots are -5. That has to change. And one of the things with the defense that we expected this year that hasn't really happened is we knew they were going to be solid, but they need to start getting some turnovers for the offense. They've only had 2 through 4 games, and that's not enough. When you have an offense that's struggling, they need to generate some turnovers, to give them shorter fields. Like you said, they can't be expected with the personnel that they have to go 15 to 16 yards multiple times a game. I mean, they don't have the people for that. And, the defense, I mean, they've been playing well. I'm not saying that, but they need to do a better job at generating some turnovers and helping out a struggling offense. And, let's face it, special teams, the return game, they've got nothing ever since Marcus Jones went down. They've had nothing this year. And that needs to change as well.
Yeah, they've had some issues really everywhere on all 3 phases, and they're doing things that are very atypical of a Patriots team. The -5 in turnovers is a perfect example of that. You just don't usually see that from this team, and that's what I think is so frustrating for me right now, Steve, is, again, you expect to, okay, yeah, the offense is going to take a couple of weeks to get rolling with Bill O'Brien now in the system and trying to get everybody on the same page, but they're turning the ball over. They're playing good defense, but the special teams have been iffy. The coaching decisions and the play calling have been questionable. I mean, the whole thing is just so frustrating, and that's what I think, that's where the biggest red flags are for me, where you're just like, okay, well, what do we need to do for the Saints? I'm worried about the Patriots cornerback depth for sure. I really will be curious to see what they do about someone like a Jalen Mills. Does he start to get more run? I know they bring in J.C. Jackson, but I'm curious if he gets more run. I'm really hoping Jonathan Jones is back this week. It seemed like he was on pace to return last week, and I think they're just being cautious with him. But it's it's a position that, like you said, you're missing your top 4 guys. You're going to have a hard time. And then you go against a decent little skill position group. I mean, Michael Thomas has had some injury problems the last couple of years, but he's still a good player when he's healthy and out there. Chris Olave is promising and has a lot of dynamic presence about him. And Alvin Kamara is one of the best backs in the league. I mean, you're going to have your hands full from a receiving aspect here. Todd chimes in wondering about Jabril Peppers. I don't know this. I think he was dealing with cramps or some kind of a stinger on the sideline and I think he'll be good to go. I don't know, Steve, have you heard anything or seen anything about that?
I haven't seen anything this morning, but I don't know if he was going to be at practice today or whatever, or he missed. I don't think they practiced till 1. So,
Yeah, they'll be practicing in like 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. So we'll see. But yeah, that would be another big loss for the secondary if he can't go.
Yeah, I mean, he's been up and down, Steve. I mean, talk about him for a second. I mean, he's been up and down. I wouldn't even say up and down. I think he's made some splash plays and he's been pretty consistently good. I don't think he's been like wow, but he's made a couple of wow plays. That would definitely be a loss. I mean, you can't really afford to keep taking so many losses in that secondary.
Yeah, and I think him and Duggar are an excellent pair because we were worried about the free safety role because with Devin McCourty retiring, but it hasn't been an issue. I think their safety play has been very good overall. So I really like Peppers. I think he was a great addition to bring back this year. Hopefully he continues to play well. But yeah, cornerback, I mean, we're not sure. I know Jackson's in the building because Lawrence Guy said earlier this morning that he showed up wearing a blazer. So we know he's there. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to play this week. And if they get Jonathan Jones back, then him and Jackson, I think that's a pretty good pair. But it all comes down to that offense. I mean, we know the defense will play tough. Even without Judon, they're going to be tough. They obviously have to have some of their corners there. But I'm not panicking about the Patriots defense per se. As long as they get a couple of those guys in the game. But that offense this week, they have to play better. I mean, and it's not just Mac, it's not just the offensive line, it's everyone. So
I agree.
That to me is the big concern.
Yeah, I agree. Let's get into the 3 keys for the game, Steve. If you want to start, feel free to go right at it. I mean,
sure.
For me, I would just say before we get into the 3 keys, I would say I want to reiterate what I said a couple minutes ago, which is I really think the Patriots need to kind of send a message to themselves this week. I think that should be the mindset going into this game. I think should be the mindset of the coaching staff, getting to the players, being like, look, that was one of those games that you just need to kind of put behind you. And we're a better representative, group than what we showed last week. And we need to go out there and make a statement on Sunday.
Right. But I still think that, yes, they need to put it behind them. Absolutely. But the other thing that really needs to happen for them is they need to watch that tape and look at the mistakes they continue to make. And these have to be corrected. We're a month into the season now, and they have to be corrected. And I'm looking at the game this week. Key number 1 is they have to run the football. I mean, with Ramondre Stevenson averaging 2.6 yards a carry, that's not getting it done. And part of it's on him. A lot of it's on the offensive line.
Yep.
They just need to run the football a lot better than they are right now.
And I still think right now, honestly, Steve, and I don't want to cut you off when you're midstream here, but some of their offensive play designs has him not really kind of getting into a rolling start. There's a lot of things where he's, it's like the shotgun handoff, like delay handoff to him where he's sitting like, on the left or the right side, hip to hip with Mac. Well, that's not really best utilizing him. It's like, he's wanting, it's like we need to get him a couple of steps through so that because once he gets going, you can really see it roll. But I don't think that they're drawing up the run plays that best utilize his talents, and obviously the line is having issues all around.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at him and Elliott. They're different players, but they're both downhill runners, and they sit back in the shotgun, and then they have to wait to get the football without a step or two. And I think they need to put Mac under center more. I know they don't trust the offensive line, you know, but you have to do it. I mean, you know, these guys are downhill runners, and I think that's, you know, I think that's a big key to getting them to run the football. I agree with Todd. It's all about discipline this week. You know, but the number two key to me is, look, Parker and Juju are established vets. I know that, but they have to get guys like Bourne and Douglas more involved. I mean,
the fact Devontae Parker played 100% of the snaps this last week is an effing joke. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's crazy.
I mean, they keep talking about, well, you know, he gives us that contested catch thing. That's fine and dandy, but when the defense doesn't respect you, and Dallas didn't, we saw them. Their safeties they did not take a step back because they didn't respect the Patriots deep ball. Well, when you have a guy like Douglas on the field, a guy like Kendrick Bourne, utilize those guys more. And if they're going to play man coverage, which the Patriots struggle against, then, you know, you have to get some bunch formations at the line and get these guys a free release. And we saw what Douglas can do. We know what Bourne can do. They have to get these guys more involved. I'm not saying they have to bench Juju, but look, he's not getting it done right now. So limit his snaps and give it to the guys that can. I don't know whether, you know, they'll activate Boutte this week. I know he struggled, but, you know, you have to give the kid another shot maybe. And, you know, if he can generate some yards after the catch, so be it. Get him in there, you know, even if it's for a couple of plays.
Well, at this point, Steve, they're in kind of a purgatory spot where they're in like this middle ground, and it's like you got to play some of these younger guys. Like, if you have to take your lumps. The reason, from what I understand, the reason Demario Douglas is on the field more because he's making too many mistakes with his routes or whatever. I feel like you got to take your lumps and let him out there, Steve, and just try to let him learn. And because you see that, you know, kind of excuse the pun here, but you see the pop he brings to the offense. You know, with some of these moves after the catch, they don't have anyone like that. They need that. They need speed. They need athleticism. You don't have to be the Miami Dolphins out there in terms of, you know, track speed, but you need to bring something to the table because right now they're compounding their own issues because you have a quarterback that doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He has enough, but he doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. You have an offensive line that's leaky, and you have receivers that aren't separating a whole lot. So what does that equal? That equals a lot of rushed, tight window throws that are easily contested, and that's why you're having so many issues with you know, this offense right now.
Yeah, and you know the thing about Douglas, even on that 42-yard route, I think he ran the wrong route because he ran into Parker. And, you know, it's easy to blame the rookie for that. Maybe Parker ran the wrong route, but at the stem of that play, they kind of run into each other. And that might have helped him gain some separation. But he's catching the football and he's making plays. And you have to go with the, you know, I'm not going to say hot hand because he's not hot, but he's at least making plays. And my third key this week, I know I'm kind of drawing this out, but
it's all right.
My third key this week is, I know they're missing Judon, but they're going to have to set the edge and get pressure on Carr. I mean, with your secondary, especially your cornerbacks all beat up, you know, you don't need to be giving him 5 and 6 seconds to throw the football. He needs to be throwing off his back foot this week. And their offensive line isn't great either. So, you know, with Uche and Keon White, Dietrich Wise, a little bit of Anthony Jennings in there, you know, they have guys that can get after it. So,
yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, my three keys are going to be simple. You know, for starters, I think they need to establish themselves in the trenches on both sides of the ball. We have seen them traditionally play a pretty good offensive line defensively, they're usually pretty good with their gap, their gap integrity, kind of making sure that, they're all taking care of their assignments on that defensive side of the ball. We're not seeing it right now. We're not seeing a whole lot of anything, and I just think they were pushed around and bullied last week. And I do think the offensive line is better than what they've showed. I have a hard time. I haven't been the biggest Cole Strange fan. I haven't been the biggest, or I've had concerns about tackle. Hell, I'm still confused on how they didn't take a tackle so early in the draft last year. And I like all the players that they took. But I still am perplexed by it, Steve, because it just doesn't make any sense, because it was so glaring. And they came up with a game plan of Calvin Anderson and Vidarian Lowe, and I thought Lowe has flashed at times to be okay, but I mean he got his ass kicked last week. I mean it was flat out.
In the last 2 games he's given up 17 pressures.
Yeah, I mean he's killing you on the right side, and it's affecting the quarterback and everything else around.
I'm curious if Riley Reif will be ready to go this week if they give him some run.
Certainly a good name to keep an eye on. So yeah, in the trenches, I think is where they need to start, Steve. My second key for me is really, I think Kamara is going to be the biggest key for the Patriots. To defensively, was what they need to key on the most. I mean, he is so dynamic out of the backfield, running, catching. He makes the offense go. And when he's rolling, they are a lot tougher to stop. So finding Alvin Kamara and limiting his yards after he has the ball in his hands is incredibly important. And then my third key for me, Steve, is the Patriots have to. I mean, Todd said it a second ago. They have to be more disciplined. I mean, they're not only losing, they're beating themselves in some ways too. I mean, they're turning the ball over. They're not taking care of their assignments. I just think that they're just not playing. They're just flat out just not playing well. And I think they need more discipline this week.
Yeah, and part of that discipline, I mean, I look at the veterans on the offense, twice last week. 3rd and 15, Juju Smith-Schuster finds a huge hole in the Dallas zone coverage. He sits down, catches the pass from Mac, and he's a yard short of the sticks. And it's like, that's a no-brainer. You go to the sticks, and then you sit down in that zone. 1 more yard, they have a first down, and they continue on. Later in the game, after they took Mac out, when Zappi was in, Parker does it. 3rd and 12, he runs a route for 11 yards. Zappi delivers the ball, and he's a yard short of the sticks. These are vets. These aren't the rookies. This should be absolute no-brainer for them. And part of that is the discipline you guys were just mentioning.
Right. Yeah. No, 100%. Give me your prediction for the game, Steve.
I don't know which way to go with this. I'm curious to see how they react after last week. I think they're going to react positively because of Bill and some of their other coaches. I think they'll eke out a win today, or Sunday, I should say, 20-17.
Okay, our scores are going to be very, very close. I am going to give the Patriots the benefit of the doubt that they have. I do not think they're a good team. I think that they are a competitive team, and I do not think they are playing at the level that I believe they can play to. I think they're better than what they've showed. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they rally around each other. The coaching staff gets them back on track this week, and they win a close game. I think they're going to win this game, Steve, 23-16. I will say this, and this is not really a fear-mongering comment or anything like that. And I don't know how you'll feel about it, Steve. I think if they get their ass kicked this week, we could be looking at a very, very weird situation for the team that we haven't seen in quite some time. I just wonder how things start to play out if they were to go out and get beat down again pretty good this week.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I think we're on to Cincinnati mode for them.
Yep.
I know the two teams are very different, but at the same time, this is when you have to rally the troops and turn it around and get back on at least winning footing for this week. We'll worry about next week when it comes.
100%. I mean, they have to do it. There's no debate. That's what they got to do. So, well, we'll see. We'll see if they're able to kind of, gut it out, Steve. And this is one of those games where if I'm the coaches, I'm saying to the players, look in the mirror and this is what can you do, in order to help correct this thing. We have to take care of our assignments, kind of quote unquote, do your job. But I think that right now you're just seeing a lot of guys just get outperformed and they're losing collectively a lot of individual matchups, which is affecting the whole team. I mean, it's just frustrating on a lot of levels. So, I think that I'm hoping, Steve, that next week we're coming out of this and saying, you know what, hey, the Patriots, look, sometimes you're going to lose bad games. They lost a bad game. They came back and they rallied and they put together a really nice performance, clean game, no turnovers, executing in the red zone. I'd love to see that. But I do think it's important they get that done because I think that they'll be fragile otherwise. So any final thoughts, Steve?
I love his comment. Bring in Pete Carroll this week.
Right. Todd cracks me up.
That's good. Well, I know you're short for time, so
I am short for time. Give me some final thoughts. Anything final thoughts?
No, I'm good. I'm just looking forward to a good game this Sunday. I just want to see him turn it around and play well. Yeah,
I agree. Like you said, I've said this a couple times now. I'll reiterate one more time. I do think they are a better team than what they showed this last week and what they've shown to the season. I think that they are closer to being the team that's competitive against Miami than getting your ass kicked by Dallas. And I've said ass and hell a couple of times. So, I'll have to go to the Miguel swear jar and make my donation. But I just, Steve, I just think that it's just one of these games. I'd like to see them get back on track, set the tempo, come out with some fire, and kind of go from there. All right. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening to Patriots 4th and 2. We again want to make sure we direct you over to PatsFans.com to check out some of the great content over there. Steve always has a couple items to check out. Ian Logue, the rest of the contributors. I want to thank Steve for joining me today, and I appreciate everyone understanding. I got to keep the show a little bit more condensed than usual. We will talk to you guys next week, hopefully after a Patriots victory. We will see you then probably on our regular day around Wednesday. So this week was a little chaotic, but we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.